it's been interesting to just try to check my own awareness of my own self, because a lot of people maybe are watching this right now and thinking, yeah, I'm feeling this extra anxiety or stress, and I can tell that I'm not taking it out in healthy ways. Maybe I'm drinking more, or eating the wrong things, or getting into more arguments. But for a lot of people, it's not obvious how to be aware and then how to take steps to where it doesn't end up in a destructive way. For example, like I've had a very stressful week, and I had a couple stressful moments the last couple days, and I've known, Gabor, that I need to get out and go for my run, or go do some burpees, or go do some breath work. Whereas honestly, 20 years ago, it would have been, let's go have a bunch of drinks. And so it's taken me a long time to even be able to watch myself and say, okay, that's not how we deal with this situation. And thank God, because otherwise I would go down in a worse hole and I would magnify things. But how can people get that a bit of awareness, and then also be able to make a different choice as opposed to one that becomes destructive?
Well, I watched a bit of your video where you were jogging out, or just finished jogging outside some lake, some park in London, and then you're recalling your alcoholic years. And I think you said there was 30 years where every day you drank, every day. Did you say it was 30 years?
Yeah, it was basically, yeah. Yeah.
What made you, I just wonder, I'm answering your question, but I'm asking a question by way of answering your question. What made you recollect that now, just at this moment? And what made you go back to that and talk about it?
Well, I think you're watching the video. I think I recorded that video on like right on January 1st, and I think I just released it. My guys released it again, but it was recent. It was 2 months ago. The reason I recorded that is because I think that was me 2 years sober.
Oh, so
And
that
so
was
I
just an
was,
anniversary. Okay.
yeah, but I had never really talked about it, and I don't think I had that clarity around it without a bit of separation, you know. But one of the things I said in there is that, I'm supposed to be a smart guy. I'm supposed to understand all these things. I'm around smart people. I was educated well, and yet I couldn't see my own failings for 30 years of going for a destructive habit that was hurting me, and yet I kept going to that repeatedly. It wasn't for 1 year or 3 years or 10 years. It was like 30 years. And that was the most shocking thing for me to realize, and also to be so grateful that I got out of that loop. But I know this is a lot of your life's work is watching people in these situations.
No, but that's
Um,
exactly what I'm getting at, is that at some point you decided that that pattern was hurting you. And you said
yes.
that's the end of it. And you didn't go to any particular program. You just said, it's hurting me. I don't want to do that anymore. So in answer to your question about what it takes for people to learn from the present situation, um, they have to get that their ordinary responses are hurting them. They have to just ask themselves, is harm relating to this whole thing? The upset, the stress, the anxiety, the irritation, how I might take it out on people in my neighborhood, or sorry, in my environment, including say my children, or my spouse, or is that working for me, or is that hurting me? So I think people have to get to that point where they get that their usual responses, and this is not an all or nothing thing. Like my wife and I are married over 50 years now, but we've had our stresses in the last few days, just because we are not in contact with anybody else really, in any close sense. So that really reveals the tensions in the relationship. Now, this morning we actually sat down and just said, let's just look at each other. Let's just see the other person. Let's just see ourselves reflected in the eyes of the other person. Because we realized that just our tensions, they were hurting us. They weren't working. So you have to get to the point where you're in touch that it doesn't work. Now you also have to have a sense of a different possibility. It's one thing to say it doesn't work, but it's another thing, but there's nothing else I can do. So I think this takes a lot of self-observation. And it takes the willingness to observe yourself, which ordinarily in our society and our culture, we're so distracted from. I mean, the whole world is created to distract ourselves from ourselves. And now that's not available to us so much.
Right. Yeah, it's so true. I mean, it's like that's most of that's been taken away from us, except the internet. You know, imagine all this without the internet. That would be an exercise in human behavior.
Well, the internet is a double-edged sword, isn't it? I mean, on the one hand, aren't you just grateful for it? I mean, this conversation, we can have conversations with loved ones that you can have from across the world or in the city, but you can't see them. That's great. But on the other hand, the average person, if I would ask them this question, in order to get the information that you need to help you cope with the COVID crisis, how much time do you have to spend on the internet? How much news do you have to watch? 5 minutes a day? In five
Yeah,
minutes a
that's
day, you can get all the information that you need to get through the next day. And the next day you can check how much time are you actually spending obsessing about it, watching this talk show, that talk show, this expert, that expert, reading the news, obsessively following the broadcasts and the podcasts. Like, how much of your mind are you filling up? And what I'm saying is that even people are using the COVID crisis to distract themselves from the COVID crisis. In other words, they're using all the news feed and all the information to distract themselves from how they actually feel about what's going on. So everything is up for questioning, I think.
do you advise people to have some type of a practice where they just spend some quiet time with themselves? I mean, is the solution just that obvious when you want to start?
Uh, so I have a yoga practice where I spend time by myself, and I let it go for about a week. I just didn't do it, and then I was noticing myself getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And then yesterday I did it, and all of a sudden it's not like great dollops of joy really appeared for me, but I felt like a different person. I was in a different relationship with myself. Now, people talk about going to the caves and meditating for 40 years, or monks in monasteries meditating and isolating themselves. Human beings have been doing this for eons for a good reason, And so, in a certain sense, the COVID has kind of given us all a massive opportunity to have a silent retreat, a private retreat, all in our own homes. Yeah, I advise people to take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it takes. Just hang out with themselves and allow themselves to experience whatever they're experiencing. If it's anxiety, allow yourself to experience the anxiety. If it's fear, allow yourself to examine the fear. If it's anger, let that be there, but observe it and be with it. I do advise that as a good practice. I mean, there's lots of other great practices I think people could engage in, but that certainly is one of them.